Oscoda Township regular board meeting. Let us have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we can all have a moment of silence for 9/11. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings,
Here.
welcome back.
Thank you.
Ms. McGuire,
Here.
Mr. Gasky,
Here.
Mr. Palmer,
Here.
Mr. Nordine here, Mr. Byer,
Here.
Mr. Weed.
Here. Are there any agenda additions?
Yes, we. Excuse me. Go ahead.
I just want to make a quick announcement at some point about the Oscoda Community Center survey that completed a few days ago. Just a little preliminary update. Choose the right place.
Under other, number 5.
Other is fine. I won't be offended.
Any other additions?
Yes, sir. We have an employee resignation, and also our community development coordinator would like to talk about USDA grant funding process and an additional phase of the project, the water main extension project.
So under other, number 6, employee resignation.
That would be, it's fine.
Under community development coordinator, item B. For the water grant. Anything else? Is there a motion to approve the agenda with the additions?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gajewski, support by Ms. McGuire. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's passed. Next, I need a motion to go into public hearing for the Oscoda Township Department Patrol Vehicle Project.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, we are now in a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Whenever you're ready.
Basically, we have applied for partial funding to purchase a new patrol vehicle. The process through USDA requires that we have a public hearing. We actually received notice today, the supervisor did, that funding will be made available, subject to us completing all the final requirements. And this essentially is one of them, giving folks the opportunity to comment. The grant amount we're seeking is in excess of $17,000 towards the total vehicle purchase price.
Any comments from anyone?
This vehicle going to be complete, Bob, with lights and everything?
That is the intent.
Yeah, I have a problem with what we were doing before, so I want to make
Right.
sure they're ready, road ready,
Yeah.
when we get them.
Will we send out an RFP for this?
We do,
We do?
yes. When we get ready to purchase, we would do that.
And we have to wait until after the grant is approved to do that? Or-
We don't, but we're very close to resolving that anyway. We could get the bids and then, we would get the bids and then submit them for approval before we actually made the purchase.
Okay.
This is gonna be a 17 or 18?
Depends on how we specify. It probably could be either, given where we are right now.
Is there any known difference between the two model years? Anything that matters?
Not that I'm aware of. We could solicit bids for either or and make a value judgment, but I assume they're very similar.
I would assume that we should either or, otherwise they'll probably quote 18, since there's only, what, 3 or 4 months left of this,
Right.
and we might save a couple bucks. If you're correct, and I think you are, that there won't be much difference in the vehicle, so, but if they either or and they specify which one they're talking about, we're good, right?
Right. And there's probably a higher probability of finding a current model year vehicle that's already completely outfitted and ready to go.
Ready to go, yeah.
That makes sense.
And this notice in the local paper, the rules say twice or 3 times, or?
No, just once. It's a little bit different. It's actually it's an informational hearing. It's different than some of the other hearings that have to be in a couple times.
Okay,
So
thank
it
you.
just has to be in once.
Any other comments?
Do we have any other grant programs that require a public hearing?
We have in the past.
Yeah. What did we use the money for? Jog my memory.
I'm pretty sure any of the trust fund require public
Okay.
hearings.
Okay, anything else? All right, then I need a motion to come out of the public hearing.
So moved.
Support?
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes. All right, we are now out of public hearing. Do you need a motion for this?
We do not at this point.
Next is public comments. Anybody who wishes to speak at this first public comment period has 4 minutes to speak and needs to fill out a comment card provided to the superintendent. If you come up and speak, please introduce yourself. Do we have any cards?
We have 2. Tim O'Haron would like to talk about the municipal water project on Van Etten Dam Road.
All right, if you can come up to the podium and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Board. My name is Tim O'Hare, and my wife Patty and I live on Van Etten Dam Road. Thanks for giving me a couple minutes, and thanks for what you do for us, by the way. This project, there's a lot of rumor and so on circulating, and I'll preface my question by saying that I'm nearing retirement. My bride and I would love to move north here to this home that we have on Van Etten Dam Road. And of course, naturally, we'd like to have good water when we do that, and know that our property values are restored so we can comfortably sell our home down south and come up here. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, and you've spoken with my wife, so I'll mention your name, but the last communication we had was that we should expect to have water by summer, okay? And of course, obviously, summer's passing us by here. So I'd like to know what the status is of the water coming down Van Etten Dam Road. I understood that it was a priority at one point, so. I have to also tell you, and I apologize, I'm severely hearing impaired. And this is probably one of the worst hearing environments for me. So my very good friend Greg is used to running ear interference for me, okay? But I rely heavily on lip reading, okay? If you can help me with that a little.
All right.
Enough said.
Anything else?
No.
All right, we'll have an update on that in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. Arnie LaRich would like to talk about PFAS and PTS.
Pump and treat systems. Sorry, I gave you just a very little basics on that as I was rushing in and catching my breath. I wasn't planning on being here tonight, but when someone sent me an email and when I saw the agenda and read into it and everything, I started to say, whoa, how did this happen in the last week without me knowing anything about it? But that happens, so we'll move on. The topic really is, in Bob's report, you have a discussion on the granulated activated carbon proposal and pump and treat systems that the Air Force recently sent you an email on September 5th. And correct me if I'm misinterpreting some of the facts, because they kind of jump around in the materials available to the public. So then 2 days later, I guess on the 7th, you had a meeting, the township had a meeting with the Air Force reps, contractors as a minimum, and also the airport authority also had, I'm guessing, a special emergency meeting to review it and make a recommendation. And so from your action item, Bob, on that you're talking to the board about, I am seeking the board's potential endorsement of the proposal adopted by the Airport Authority Board for the location of the control plant and the understanding that this will be communicated to the Air Force for the preferred alternative by the township. Preferred alternative by the township. So my first question is, are you planning on, and probably shouldn't ask questions, I should know better by now, but if you are planning on voting on a preferred option, I strongly suggest that you look at that it's premature. General public has, from my calling around, doesn't know anything about this. And number two, the Restoration Advisory Board, to my knowledge, was not involved or notified of any of this. So we're just catching up on this, and we have a meeting next week. And I understand the Air Force probably sprung this on you, I'm guessing, which puts you at a disadvantage. I appreciate that. But in your report, Bob, it's not clear to me which of the three options actually, that the Air Force has been talking about or just recently added to the one that they did talk about, which was the storm sewer with control. But now they're talking about two locations for groundwater injection. And so that, I guess, became an issue for the township and the airport authority. I don't know which option the airport authority adopted because that was not included. At least I couldn't find it in your report tonight, so I'm ill-prepared to talk about that, for or against. So I strongly suggest that you take that into account and hopefully not vote as a preferred tonight. And so that's my comment.
Thank you. Any other cards?
No, sir.
All right, the floor is now closed to public comment. For the consent agenda, any questions or comments regarding the work session minutes from August 25th, regular meeting minutes of August 28th, payment of bills for $186,780.09, streetlight LED conversion process, additional fire department pager purchases. Oh, I'm sorry, went too far. So we'll stop there at the $186,000. Any comments? Have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there support?
I'll support it.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. I'm sorry, Mr. Gieske. Roll call.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, now on to streetlight LED conversion process.
Would you like me to elaborate on that?
It's information on the consent agenda.
How am I missing? Oh. See, this is what happens when I split things between pages. All right, so streetlight LED conversion, the additional fire department pagers, and the RFQ in parks. So we're all good for that for the consent agenda, right?
Right.
All right. Subcommittee reports, bike path fundraiser.
Yeah, I have a sheet here, for people to sign up. It's for either, we're gonna have 2 nights, Wednesday, September 27th, and Thursday, September 28th. And not only the board members can help serve, but also spouses or significant others if you have something. And Ms. McGuire has generously agreed to be the bartender for both nights, so that's a big job to have filled. So I'll have this, and I can pass it around. You can pick a night that if you're able to work, just mark it down, and then I'll turn that information over to the committee, and we can get this together.
All right. Alexander Shorewood Road update.
Yes, I'm happy to tell the board, and I would hope we get a little bit of coverage on this through the news, that Alexander project is complete as of this afternoon. It's pretty recent stuff. Our part, the seal coat through the state forest land, was done today. Since 2 weeks ago, and I talked about this, they have improved the roadbed prior to today's seal coat. More gravel, rolled harder, shoulder work. Also gravel on the shoulders of the paved part, so I'm assuming it's pretty much done. And also, I'm pleased to report that Blaine Street, that leads from 23 up to Pine Street next to the furniture store, was seal coated also today. So we got kind of a twofer here, so. Last thing is, the board asked for cost estimates for Colbath Road recently, and Bob tells me that they have promised to have that at least by the 25th of this month, so.
Thank you. Water main extension for Van Etten Dam Road and Forest Drive.
Okay, thank you. And I was going to be, I'll give the update, I guess, on Van Etten Dam, well, the whole project as a whole. Can you hear me okay?
I'm gonna move down.
Okay. Sure,
Thank you.
sure. Okay. So our goal was to have a summer construction, and when I called everybody and let them know, it was specified with if the easements were able to be obtained, then we would be going out to bid for a summer construction. That being said, things unfortunately changed a little bit in regard to Van Etten Dam Road, and it became necessary to do a survey, a complete survey of the road, and some additional title work. Well, I should say the title work that was done made it necessary to do the additional survey work, because there was some unclear, not clear titles, question marks. So in order to make sure that the easements we were getting were correct,
We have been slightly delayed in the process. So right now, we actually have easement documents in hand that we're seeking from the homeowners on Forest Lane, because we do have 2 private drives with this project. We have Forest Lane as well as the section of Van Etten Dam Road. So Forest Lane, we actually have the easements in hand, and we've met with most of the property owners. We have 13 easements that we're seeking, 2 of which have been signed. We are still waiting on the easement documents for Van Etten Dam Road. As soon as we have those easements, we'll be contacting the homeowners. And I plan on working through you, Greg, because you have a good connection with everybody, so that we can get those back as soon as possible. Unfortunately, we're in September. Even if, in talking with the engineer, even if we were to get all easements signed, which again, I don't have the easements even in hand yet for Van Etten Dam Road, by Friday, we would still be pretty rushed to try to get this project out to bid this fall. So the thought is, the thought is we'll be going out to bid as soon as we can for a spring construction, unfortunately. So we are delayed. That being said, as soon as the easements are in place, they have to, the engineer will review, especially the Van Etten Dam Road, to make sure that nothing has to be changed in the plans based on what came up from the survey of the actual road itself. They'll have to, if any changes are necessary, they'll make those changes to the plans and then resubmit them to the DEQ, but hopefully none of that's necessary. And then they'll be ready to go out to bid. The project has to be out to bid for 30 days. And again, this time of the year, it looks like we'll be doing a spring construction. In the meantime, in talking with the engineer on that, unfortunately, due to the hurricane, there's a gas, or oil shortage, I should say, and like she indicated, the cost of PEX has just gone through the roof, and that is the material that would be used for the project. So in theory, if we went out to bid this fall, our project costs would be greatly increased because of the cost of PEX. Because if you don't have that currently in hand, if you had to try to get it right now, the cost would be much greater, So unfortunately, we're going to be slightly delayed. We have talked to the grant agency in regard to an extension because we were supposed to expend all funds by August of next year. They've basically indicated that right now they're not going to preliminary give us an extension, but as long as we're substantially going in the project, they will do that. So that's a good sign. So again, our goal is to get out to bid as soon as possible this fall with a spring breaking ground. So.
Spring breaking ground.
Right.
Just, is there anything that can, at this point, do you know, anything that would delay this project beyond that?
I wouldn't want to speculate to that, sir. I guess the thing that would, I guess I could say that if we don't get somebody to sign on an easement and we have to go to court after that, that could delay things. We need to get everybody to sign off. Right now, Forest Lane looks pretty good. I don't think we're going to have any problems, and I'm not sure. When I made the preliminary calls on Van Etten Dam Road, everything sounded positive, so I'm hopeful for that. Right, and we are going for a general utility easement. So.
Good. Okay. Well, we've been through that because I don't know. Greg happened to mention anything, we tried to get the gas in there.
Yes, you did.
2 years?
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Right.
And of course, there was one holdout, so with this water situation, I'm hoping that won't be there.
We hope as well.
Okay, all right. And that would be a court
That would be,
situation
right.
if indeed, okay, on your part. the
I would assume
township.
so, yes.
Okay, well, I thank you. I mean, of course, naturally, we'd like to have it done.
So would we. I mean,
Yeah,
it's very disappointing on our end as well. I mean, obviously, this is it's affected everybody in that area as well as the expanded area, and we want to seek resolution for you as soon as possible. So
Okay, well,
I
I
apologize
appreciate it.
for the delay, and we will try to get it going.
You can only do what you can do. Now, let me ask you, if you don't mind repeating again, when do you anticipate on getting the easements to us?
As soon as they are in my hands to do that, they're not complete yet. We were waiting on the survey information from the surveyor on the road itself to legally, or to provide a legal, there's never been a legal description of that road. So really, the township is taking on, I believe it was around a $9,500, $10,000 cost. We will now have that road surveyed, which really will help the property owners moving forward. So that's a good thing for you.
Has the survey been completed?
The survey itself has been completed, yes. That he's just, the surveyor is just finishing up a few things, and when he gets that legal description done, he will be giving it to the attorney. We'll then embed that into the easement itself.
Okay, great. Now, how will the easements come out? Are they gonna be by mail, email?
So far, what we've been doing on Forest is hand delivering, the people making door-to-door contact, and then calling, faxing, emailing, whatever the best way is to get it to somebody. The
Okay.
quickest. There's a couple people that couldn't drive, so I've hand delivered them. They're living in another area, so.
Got it. And does it have to come to that address, or could it come to our downstate address?
Wherever you're going to be. So I think what we could do, Greg, is we could work on the list of people and see if people are starting to leave this fall, to get a correct address and at least a phone number so that we can get a hold of them. And then when you sign, you have to sign in front of a notary.
Oh,
So,
very good, no problem. We spend a lot of time up here all season, but it's just, there are occasions when we're not here, so
Right.
that's why I asked. Spring.
Spring
Bottom
construction,
line.
right, yes, yeah. I mean, there's just no, like. the
Barring a
engineer
legal
said-
dispute.
Yeah, barring a legal dispute, yes.
By,
Barring a legal dispute.
yeah, right on.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did that one too. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Okay.
the great answer, okay? We'll look forward to spring, and
Okay,
if there's anything I could personally do to expedite a little bit on my own part, if I'm here, I'd be glad to,
okay,
pitch in.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, can I ask, is there any other water discussion this evening?
Just
No, I'm gonna get out of your hair then, okay? Thank you.
got an update with a meeting we had with the teleconference meeting we had today with the governor's office. We described to them, the DEQ and the health department were also a part of that. We described to them what our issues were and our concerns in general with both the contamination and a water main extension. We've told them what resources we needed, and the governor's office is saying they're going to put together some sort of plan or a way to track everything that's going on, which is good. One kind of comment that was made had me a little concerned, that seemed the governor's office seemed to have some focus on grayling more than us, which is, I guess, because grayling is more of a state function than it is a federal function, but, we're, as far as PFAS goes, we're 5 years deep into it already. But I think it was a very good discussion with them. So on to reports. First is computer upgrade and replacement schedule.
Yes, the board has previously adopted a computer upgrade schedule, which is attached to my report. We were originally slated to purchase 4 computers this year, but due to the reorganization with our Office of Economic Development, that machine would not be necessary. So we would be looking at purchasing 3. And also, we last year purchased one for the deputy treasurer as opposed to the treasurer. So we would do a year-to-year reversal on that particular purchase. So the bottom line is we're looking at machines for the clerk, the treasurer, and a 3rd machine in the squad room of the police department. That machine needs Windows 7 so that it can maintain compatibility with other law enforcement agencies. The others would be Windows 10. Also, the computing requirements for the machine in the police department were somewhat in question when I wrote my report. Based on discussion today, I think actually we've confirmed that they are somewhat less than the other 2 machines, so there's maybe some modest cost savings to be had there. The township supervisor probably has more specific information in that regard. The specifications that have been put together are based upon the concept that the board had adopted earlier that's referenced in the goals and objectives, and that is that we should buy computer equipment or configure it so that it will last for many years, which should result in cost savings. That is opposed to buying what the current minimum standards are and replacing on a more frequent and routine basis. With that approach in mind, you'll find a list of specifications that was put together by our township supervisor. He had generously offered to assemble the components in addition to putting together the list of those components and basically convert those parts into operable laptop or desktop machines. So if that were to happen, we have confirmed that our IT provider would support the machines. Once we have an operable machine, the folks who maintain them regularly would take care of them. If we were to proceed on that basis, the anticipated cost for the clerk and treasurer, and it could vary somewhat based on modest changes in the component pricing, would be $795 approximately. The police machine would be somewhat less, modestly less. Again, our IT company would support this in terms of service after the machines are operable. It is assumed and seems reasonable that we will save money. We will reduce costs by doing this as opposed to buying pre-assembled units with similar specifications. If concern existed in that regard, we could solicit quotations from our IT company, but there may be some difficulty in comparing apples to apples with the exact components. Should give us some idea, and I think there may be some additional information that Mr. Weed is willing to elaborate on relative to that cost comparison that we now have. It should be noted that the combined purchase of these machines exceeds the administrative spending threshold of $2,000 per the purchasing policy. However, this is a unique circumstance, and it would appear the board would have latitude to purchase the components as I've outlined, if you deem it to be in the township's best interest. So with that thought in mind, I am seeking authorization to proceed in ordering those computer system components for 3 desktop units with the list assembled by our supervisor, with the understanding that we will accept Mr. Weed's offer to assemble the components into operable units, and that therefore would assume we would not solicit independent cost quotations.
Some additional information I have is that what I spec'd out here for the clerk and the treasurer is a computer that can run several different tasks at the same time. Their current computers are not configured for that. I checked into Ms. McGuire's computer the other day as to what it was doing, and it was almost maxed out. So these computer specs, this is a very long-term computer. It will handle a lot without having as rapid of a degradation as the computer styles that we have been purchasing. I did try to find off-the-shelf computers. This configuration, there isn't an off-the-shelf. There is one that is a grade lower than what I spec'd out here, and it costs $400 more than the pricing we have here. And actually, this pricing changes almost every day. Today's pricing was about $70 less than what was in your packets. The police computer, there are ones that are spec'd that same way that I have spec'd out the police one over the weekend. There is an off-the-shelf that's $250 more. That's the lowest price I could find for it. So my proposal in this is just a matter of trying to save a little bit of money for the township. But if you'd rather buy off-the-shelf, be my guest.
Do you have a brand of computer that you like or don't like? Because if we ask for, if we send out specs and stuff like this, and we don't get to choose, or they're gonna say this is a Mac or this is a Lenovo or whatever. And all I'm asking is, I'm hearing a lot of dissatisfaction with the ones that we have, that particular brand.
It isn't really about the brand, I don't think. It's about the capacity of the machine,
Okay.
how well the components perform. So essentially, we're talking about taking high-level performing components and putting them in a box.
All right.
So if you were to buy off the shelf, like you were to get a Dell or something, you're gonna have a hard drive in it that is not meant to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's meant to be turned on after you get home from work, run it a few hours, and that's it. These are meant to last. They're enterprise quality components so that it minimizes the risk of something going down and causing productivity issues. So, any other comments?
I may be coming in at the tail end of the conversation on this topic since I've been off the board for a couple of months, but the idea of assembling computers from components isn't new to me. And if we can save some money and Aaron's able and willing to do it, then that's great. I mean, it certainly is a viable way of saving some cost. And it just comes down to the quality of the components, which I feel he's already covered. So I think we have a minimum or a negligible exposure for risk, you know, if anyone was concerned about putting pieces together versus buying a pre-assembled item.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to proceed with ordering computer system components for 3 desktop units based on the list assembled by our township supervisor.
I support that.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, Air Force GAC plant construction plan.
Yes, and GAC is Granular Activated Carbon Treatment Plant. As alluded to by Mr. LaRich, we have received a proposal from the Air Force to construct such a plant in the Wurtsmith district on township property. I've included with my report maps which show the location of the proposed improvements, which is generally across the street from the community center. This plan of action in general was raised a few weeks ago at an on-site meeting, shortly before an on-site meeting at Wurtsmith, to talk about discharge to the storm sewer system, and then the location became a question. That meeting was attended by myself, the consulting engineers, contractors working for the Air Force, Airport Authority, and Road Commission members. And again, they were talking at that time about the same location, but a connection to the storm sewer system. It was indicated on a preliminary basis at that point that the proposed location could be of concern, given its proposed siting on township property in that particular location, and also the connection to the storm sewer was potentially of concern. That was couched in terms of us needing additional information, time for deliberation, at least from a township perspective, and also there was some acknowledgement that the efforts to address groundwater contamination were important to the community and would be appreciated. So I think it's important to acknowledge that. The more recent communication from the Air Force representative indicates that instead of a storm sewer connection, they're looking at groundwater reinjection. That's good news from the storm sewer impact standpoint, not so positive, at least at first blush, from a property use and development standpoint. Again, given the location and the amount of space that the groundwater discharge system would take up. In discussing the scenario with an Air Force representative, it became apparent that some level of urgency exists. They would like to establish a direction so that they can begin planning in earnest to build the plant. To that end, discussion took place at the staff level regarding potential alternative locations that might be less intrusive and reduce the potential for impairing or actually eliminating development opportunities and affecting property values potentially. Regardless of where the facility is ultimately located, if it's not on property owned by the Air Force, some type of understanding presumably would have to be developed regarding access and maintenance issues. So with that information as a backdrop, the Airport Authority met last week. I should note it was a regular meeting, and it fell from a timing sequence in at a point where we could have the discussion, move the discussion forward, honor the request of the Air Force to try and respond with some urgency, and then have the discussion this evening. Whether we take action or not is obviously up to the board, but at least we're moving the process forward was the thought. So the airport did develop an alternate siting location, generally where the older tank farm is, per the map that's included in my report. I've also put on the board table a property card from the assessor's office, which generally shows the area as well, to provide some clarity as compared to the overhead map that was in the packet. But again, it's generally where the older farm fuel facility is, reasonably close to one of the existing plants, treatment plants. It's believed that that would be less intrusive and have benefits in terms of site development. So with that in mind, I'm seeking the board's potential endorsement of the proposal which the OWA board adopted last Thursday for siting of the GAC plant, with the understanding that it would be communicated to the Air Force as our preferred alternative. Obviously, we don't know how that they will respond. There may be additional discussion, almost certainly there will be. But they've asked for our feedback, and this is an attempt to provide it to them.
Bob, do you know what they mean by there's a sense of urgency? That's a little vague. They want to start building this fall, or?
I don't believe so. I think the plan would be spring construction, is my understanding, but the process of planning, bidding, all those things takes some time.
Okay. Well, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I'm just a little concerned that we get ourselves in a situation where the Air Force, which has been somewhat difficult to deal with over the years, but a variety of things, could say in the future, we presented this idea to the Oscoda Township Board, and they dilly-dallied with this forever. You know, we thought that there would be an urgency about fixing this water situation, and apparently the Oscoda Township Board doesn't share that concern. And we do, of course, you know, but you see what I mean? I'm curious how much time we have for an answer.
Yeah, we did discuss that with the governor's office today in the DEQ. Told them the story of what happened with this, because this was something that they had developed a plan for, then came to us and said, hey, guess what we're going to do? And it would have been nice to have them consult beforehand so they wouldn't do that planning. So much planning and spend time on that when they could have been looking at a different location. And I also did bring that up to Congressman Kildee. So I made sure they're aware. We want this to happen, but I think the Air Force needs to have some more municipal involvement in order to make this flow smoother. It could help their efficiency quite a bit.
Has the Michigan DEQ ever mentioned or suggested such a plan, this GAC plan? Is this a process that they said, you know, this might really work for you or something? Or is this the first time you've heard of this?
I believe it is similar to the existing plant that they constructed, the most recent plant, and I'm quite confident that the state officials have had some input in that. What exactly, to what extent, I don't know. But it's not a new concept at this
Okay.
point.
And the DEQ is aware of the alternate plan that we're proposing. Is that right?
I don't know that they are.
Okay, I thought there was mention that the DEQ was, had looked at it and said they were in agreement with it.
I'm not aware of that.
I'm not sure.
No, not aware that they have.
They are at least aware.
Maybe that was
though.
at the airport board, I'm not sure, but.
Well,
They would be aware of it after today's phone call, though. This was discussed in the conference call you had today. This situation was the secondary location brought up on the conference call with the governor's office and the DEQ?
No, what was brought up was that they had arranged to put it on the property shown on your document here near the community center.
Okay. The fact that they had it all staked out.
And they
before
had it all staked out
they were-
without informing the municipality.
Well, I, for one, would prefer to not have it on such a prime piece of property since we're in the process of trying to sell some of our township properties. This is kind of a prime piece to put a operation like this, probably gonna be here for another 30 years. So locating it on the airport authority property kind of alleviates that problem. And at the last RAB meeting, and I believe, if I understood what they were saying, when they were showing us the GAC plant that is there now, then operating, this new plant is simply a bigger version of that, except that they said the new plant was going to be tied into the storm sewer system. And so I posed a question to one of the employees there, well, because when we visited the GAC plant that's there now and operating, they said the water infiltration system is a better operating system because it forces the pollutants into where they're being taken out. So I posed the question, well, if that's a better system, and you're going to build a new, bigger, better plant, why wouldn't you use that same system? And so perhaps that's come back around that they are looking at that now, and I quite honestly think that would be a better solution than putting it into our storm sewer. So I think if the airport authority has found a spot that works for them, I think we should at least propose that to the Air Force and then see where it goes from there. Now, like Mr. Lurich indicated, this is kind of a quick thing, and there is another RAB, although it's an orientation meeting a week from tomorrow. I don't know if we wanted to do something before that meeting or wait until after the RAB meeting so it could be discussed. But from my personal standpoint, I prefer the alternate location so we can preserve our own property in the Wordsmith district.
Was there any indication as to why they chose that particular site? I mean,
The initial indication was it is located relatively equidistantly between the existing plants and economics in terms of connection to storm sewer, et cetera. It just made sense from a cost effectiveness standpoint, was my understanding.
I see.
There was another reason, I don't know if you can take an input or not. They said they're expanding from 300 gallons per minute to 500, they told us that at the orientation meeting. And that's because they're looking at the major major plume that's at the end of the runway that's going toward Graveler Park, so they're thinking of expanding the well system to capture that plume, so that's another reason why they would try to stay in that area, probably economics.
Yeah, and they may have mentioned that also, actually.
Yeah, they're gonna occupy this property for several decades. And this is not a good location, but the location the airport authority had proposed, I think, is ideal. And the airport board has agreed with that for that location. They believe that will work out very well there too. I do have a concern about them adding more facilities, and what are they gonna do about their older facilities? Because so far they haven't shown to be very good caretakers of those facilities.
Did I understand you to say that the Air Force would like to be the owner of the property wherever this is built?
We don't know that. So what I'm saying is those kinds of details, whether it's the township or the airport authority or whatever party winds up agreeing to site the thing, will have to be worked out. Is ownership gonna transfer? Is there gonna be a lease? Who's gonna maintain the property? All those things.
Okay. If it's a lease or a sale, and let's say we end up deciding what Aaron was just talking about, the airport property, how do we get that to the Air Force? Does the township purchase it from the airport authority and then donate it to the Air Force, or has that been thought about?
I think in this instance, the airport authority would be dealing directly with the Air Force.
So then essentially, we would be out of the picture with this.
Correct.
Regarding the property.
The property, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But could we have some input along with the airport authority when they draft a contract with the Air Force to have some clauses in there where they could be required to take down the old plant, which apparently they're not using anymore, to clear that property?
We would. I think, my sense is that the Air Force is open to input, and we also have direct input through the airport authority, our representation there. And also that may be something that could be talked about at the RAB meetings in addition. So, yeah, we should have an opportunity there. Would not have the same amount of direct input as the airport, but still a voice in the process.
Okay.
During our RAB orientation, they did say that they were thinking about putting it next to the benzene plant. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this alternate location isn't far from that. It's across the street.
In your response to the Air Force, I'm going back to my original concern about, at some point in the future, are they going to accuse us of screwing around, dragging our feet, and so forth, you know? In your next communication, would it be possible for you to, say you've indicated there's a sense of urgency, and we share that? Could you define what your sense of, can you be a little more specific? What are you looking for as far as a settlement of these questions, and get them to commit to a timeline, rather than just a nebulous, there's a sense of urgency, because they can come up with anything. I guess I'm really paranoid about the Air Force.
No,
but,
it's a fair point. I get what you're saying.
they could come up with anything and said, well, God, we thought the end of September would have been fair, so.
Right.
Can you pin them down a little bit? And say,
We could, and the sense of urgency verbiage is from myself, not them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but he did want me to make it clear that there is,
Yeah. They may not have used that verbiage, but it meant that.
well, it clearly did to me, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they would like to move forward as soon as they can, is the bottom line.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying then is that if we agreed to allow them to build it on the site that they've selected on our property, then it would move forward and happen the way it is. But we're proposing a different site, and so then we would have to wait for the Air Force to approve that site, if that's what we
Yeah,
do
yes.
tonight.
They would presumably have to work through an agreement with the airport authority, which would still be the case on township property. There's still going to be some issues that need to be addressed before they can plow ahead.
Right. So as an alternate, if that site were not acceptable, they could always come back to the original site on our property, and then we would have grounds to negotiate whatever contract with the Air Force we wanted to enter into then.
We would, or propose a different alternative even.
Yeah, okay.
It seems unfortunate that the Air Force hasn't given their engineering transparency to us as to what they're evaluating the sites with, so that we could understand and have more of a dialogue. It's almost like there's one option, and then we have to decide if we say something, we don't like it, that suddenly we're the guys stopping everything. It's kind of a tough negotiation this way.
Well, I think part of the problem was originally they were planning to put it by the old plant because that plant took the treated water and put it in the storm sewer. So they wanted to be close to that so they could do that same process. Well, now if they're going to do the in-ground filtration, it doesn't have to be there. So I'm assuming, of course, you know what happens when you assume, but if that's not the case, then they could put it anywhere. And if we propose this airport authority, I really don't see why they wouldn't. I don't know what the problem would be with that. So my feeling would be to send that proposal, the airport authority proposal, to the Air Force, and then see what, so that we can't be saying we're holding up the progress here.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal adopted by the Oscoda Wordsmith Airport Authority for the location of the new GAC plant, and that this will be communicated to the Air Force as the preferred alternative of the township.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed.
Did they talk about job creation at all? It's not the most important factor by far, but did they say it's going to take 3 people to run this plant or 10?
Haven't heard anything about it.
Okay.
Natural gas purchase contract.
Yes, we had talked at a recent meeting about a natural gas purchase contract that expired, talked about alternatives for moving forward, including recommendation from our consultant, and settled on a 3-year arrangement with CenterPoint Energy. What I've attached to my report is the contract. I note that the supervisor's name needs to be changed, and we're also going to need to add a couple of addresses that were omitted, that being the telecom building on Arrow Street and the bathhouse at the beach park. But with those changes, then I would be seeking approval from the board to have the supervisor execute the document, thereby entering into the 3-year agreement with CenterPoint.
Comments?
Has the attorney reviewed this contract?
I asked the consultant to review it.
Okay. Do the consultants, do you know, does that involve an attorney looking at it, or?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. So if there was a concern in that regard, we could do that.
So has the consultant gotten back with you?
Yes, he basically said it looked acceptable, caution to make sure that we don't have small accounts on that could be terminated because there's a termination fee during that 3-year term.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I will move that we execute the document that we're talking about here in current form.
I support that. Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call.
With existing changes?
With the suggested changes?
Yes, yeah, current form with, changes that we've discussed, so, I'm sorry.
Roll call.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, draft fiscal year 2018 budget.
Yes, I had indicated that it should be available for presentation, and it is in fact on the board table. Sure, everybody's thrilled to have that document. It is being presented in advance, as you might expect, of our upcoming work session. We have distributed electronic versions as well. If anybody has any questions or specific concerns in advance of the work session, please let me know, and we'll try and get you responsive materials. And moving on informationally, last item is just a notice that the purchase of the hoist earlier this year triggered some discussion amongst the building and grounds maintenance staff regarding how we use spaces in the facility. The new hoist is bigger. So attached to my report is a short memo and a couple of drawings showing that the vehicle maintenance function is going to be moved into the northernmost heated portion of the building. It can be driven into straight as opposed to an angle in the main part with a hoist. The heat is segregated and zoned there. Electric service will support the function. We can have more security. Basically, staff believe that's the most sensible place to put the hoist, and because it differs modestly from what we've talked about going back several years in terms of building layout, I thought the board should be aware of it. And that would conclude my report.
All right, next, Oscoda Beach Park donated benches.
Okay, thank you. Actually, my report slightly changed since last week. We actually have now 4 benches that have been purchased over the course of the summer, 2 of which have been installed, and those were both installed in memory of a lost loved one. The one bench was purchased by the Littman family. They've been vacationing in the Oscoda area for decades and purchased a bench in loving memory of Boots Haber, I should say. This bench was placed on the south end of the boardwalk near the swing set, and I did include a photo. The whole family comes up and stays. They come from all over the country, and they stay for a week on vacation, and the majority of the family was there for that picture that I included. And then the Earhart family owns a vacation home in Oscoda, and they purchased a bench in loving memory of Jerry Earhold Jr. and his parents. This bench was placed on the boardwalk just south of the bathhouse, and there was also a photo there as well. So, and they each picked those locations. So I wanted to make the board aware, this is a very generous donation, I feel, to our community. The benches with shipping and so on do range between $9 and $915. So the cost of that includes the plaque that they decide what it is to, what they want to say. So we do have 2 more that have been purchased and will still be installed this year, but I don't want to release that information and because there's surprises to the families. So.
All right.
Are we reaching a little bit of a saturation point on location of benches?
We're getting kind of close, but when we pick locations, I work with the family to try to place it so that it would be there'd be a logical place to maybe put another one. I work with them a little bit there. So the only concern so far was raised was DPW in regard to snow removal. I shouldn't say snow removal, sand removal. In the wintertime, sometimes after a harsh winter in the spring, they have to use the the bucket, to remove snow. And, Bill had indicated it would be an issue with benches, but that really became an issue after we installed the first couple benches. So I guess it's kind of pointless, now. Yeah. So, but, I guess we are running out of room, but I shouldn't say running out of room, but maybe it could be possibly we could switch to some additional picnic benches or other amenities. There's also a need for benches in the downtown, although people just love, more people find comfort in that beach park and in going there and memories, and that's why they, people sat there with their family, and that's why they want to purchase, something to commemorate that. So, maybe there's other things that we could consider if we do run out of room. But I would say we have a good 6, or at least 6 more spots we could put.
Well, I sincerely hope that we get down to business as far as the land we purchased on the north side.
Right.
And probably one of the first things would be an extension of the boardwalk.
Well, that is right, that down to business part was on the consent agenda earlier tonight, and that was talking about the RFQ
Yep.
for that area, the beach park, as well as Furtaw Field and Benetton Beach as well. So that would be a good area that when we do expand, there'd definitely be opportunities there for people to purchase, so.
Do you let people know that that's in the works for the future?
I haven't yet,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
because it hasn't really been a question mark. But I can say that one more bench that is coming is gonna be facing actually the splash pad. So they specifically wanted a bench in that location, so I'm pretty excited about that.
All right, next, grant water main extension.
Okay. Earlier today, I did email out information, and then I provided hard copies as well, in regard to the USDA loan and grant opportunity that we've identified, actually a few weeks ago, as a possibility for this phase 2 of the project, of the alternate, the area of alternate water, basically the DEQ and the health department have indicated. So this is a grant loan project and program, similar to other USDA applications that we made. There's a pre-application process that you go through, and then, actually the same thing happened for the patrol car that we just talked about tonight. So there's a pre-application process, they review that, and then they come back and based on their review, ask you to submit a full application. So tonight is information about the pre-application, and there's no deadline to apply at all. You can apply at any time, but they're currently, like the 2017 funding is actually expended. They don't have any more, and 2018 does start on October 1st. So we're at a perfect time to apply for that. There's no cap on what we apply for. And again, like I mentioned, it's similar to the other grant programs. A lot of the paperwork is actually similar. Once they've reviewed, then they invite us to submit a full proposal or application. So Spicer has reviewed the application process or application and come up with a cost proposal to fill that application out for us. They've identified there's items 1 through 10 are all needed for the pre-application, so that proposal from Spicer indicates, what they feel each item 1 through 10. There's a little bit of involvement from my part or Bob's part in regard to getting them information. But they've indicated that it would be a cost of $1,500 to complete that pre-application for us. And Jennifer had indicated that she felt that, if the board approved, she could get that probably done within this week and get it submitted.
Comments?
And I guess I would mention that what we're looking for is, again, phase 2, we've identified preliminary cost estimates to be right around $4 million, a little bit over, like $4.1 million.
I thought it was 4.7.
Yeah, that's what I got too.
That's what you got where?
I think we're talking about the difference between the grant eligible project and spread it across for connections to the house and so forth. That would be the differential.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what you're,
Total cost for phase 2
You're correct.
was about 4.7.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
For the grant, we're looking at 4 million, is that right?
right.
Okay. All right, any comments?
Well, I would just like to say that I hope we've learned some lessons from our Phase 1 project and that we will anticipate the things that need to be done, such as surveys and easement documents and being in contact with our attorney on an earlier basis so that we can, this is obviously going to be a bigger project than the Phase 1. So in order to make that flow a little more fluidly, I think we'll learn from our mistakes, and then this next phase should hopefully be better and doing the things that need to be done paperwork-wise, I guess.
Any other comments?
Agreed. Thanks, Bill.
Only in the sense that I guess, I think there were some unknowns in this situation, and I feel, I guess I'll just stop. I'm ahead or behind, depending on how you look at it, so.
Well, I'm just saying, we've been through this
Right.
once, and we learned some lessons, so we
Yes.
should heed those lessons and anticipate those
I
things
sure will try.
in the future, yeah, okay.
So we're looking for a motion to go forward with,
With the proposal with Spicer. And then, well, I guess both. Submitting the pre-application and approving the proposal from Spicer to,
So moved.
I'll support that. Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, develop by Oscoda Township representative appointment.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're looking for, what we discussed a few meetings ago, was having a township official sanctioned to represent the township during the develop by Osco meetings or actions. So we'll be looking for a volunteer, or if anybody has current concerns or questions about it.
We already have a representative. Why does it have to be a township board member?
Who is that?
Ann goes.
I go occasionally. I wouldn't say exactly a representative, but I go occasionally when my schedule allows, yes.
Which
Yeah.
kind of ties into what she does, so. Yes.
But I'm not opposed to having a township representative.
Do that.
Yeah.
What is
Okay.
involved, what's involved in that? You could,
They meet on a monthly basis, and it depends on where it's located. Sometimes they try to rotate around. But, sometimes the meetings are out, in Hale or other places, and it doesn't always work with the schedule to get out there. But it's basically was started by grassroots efforts, basically 6 years ago, I think, to try to be more of an economic driving force for our county, because our county doesn't necessarily have a very aggressive presence in regard to trying to develop Iasco as a whole. So we formed this group, and it's kind of evolved and gone in different directions over time. But it, has been run by Michigan Works here and there, and then the chamber, East Tawas Chamber, and so it's just kind of evolved around a little bit. But the goal is to promote the county as a whole.
so it wasn't something that was started by the county or
No, it was
implemented
not.
by the county itself?
It was not started by the county.
No, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the county just recently vote down a presence at the county level, a person who would be a county development coordinator?
I don't know if that was a vote.
Oh, I don't know.
But there was talk about having a county position for
Right.
economic development coordinator. And that was not looked upon favorably by a county agency, whichever that was. I don't recall, but.
I see.
There are a couple
And I
county
think-
commissioners that attend on a regular basis to
And I
help
think
ask
that,
them.
I think we need a little more governmental umph at this Develop by Osco program. I think it's extremely important that the county is more on board with, as like you said, to develop the county as a whole, whereas right now it's just being completely piecemeal.
In
Right.
the couple meetings that I went to, I know Jeff Johnston was there, and a couple of other folks, Mark Miller's attended, both of them that I was there. But there's not a lot of other attendees
No,
that aren't part of
right.
the actual board itself. So sometimes I feel like the committee might be lacking some traction, but that's not necessarily because of the attendees that aren't the board. So I kind of feel like maybe this could be useful to help build some interest and some pressure to get things moving maybe forward faster, further, whatever the term may be. But in the absence of a county presence, I guess this is really all we have.
Is there an imbalance as far as the membership from different geographical sections of the county?
I think it kind of depends on the topic as to who comes.
They meet in the morning,
Yeah.
8:30
any particular day?
Thursdays.
Bye.
Sorry, Jim.
So by appointing this representative, we would not be appointing anyone to the Develop by Osco board, just simply
Correct.
to attend and view and possibly report back.
Representative
Correct.
of.
There has been a township rep appointed in the past, right, Ann?
It might be me.
I mean,
I mean,
yeah,
I think it's,
yeah,
I'm
it's-
pretty sure it's me.
Right.
Right. A long time ago. I think Gary Kellen, if you look back at meeting minutes, Gary Kellen, I mean, it was back when he was assistant superintendent, and he brought the information to the board about the organization. I mean, that's how long it's been involved, or been. I think it was actually started by George Falkenhagen at ACC, if I remember right. That's where the meetings all first started. So, and again, the thought was grassroots to try to do our own thing, so to speak, for economic development on behalf of Iosco County, because they didn't seem to be doing it, so. So they developed the toolkit, they have a website, Develop Iosco website, the toolkit, that has a lot of information. It was all recently updated on, so if you're a business looking to, start up in Iosco County, has a lot of information about the county as a whole, so. So,
Well, I'd like to say that I have some interest in this. I wouldn't want to say I want to railroad anybody who might also have interest, but let me just say I have interest. I've been to the Bay, what is it called? The Bay, all I want to say right now is Bay Watch, but that's not the right thing. What is it?
it's not is it Bay
Bay
Futures?
Futures,
I
thank
think
you
it's
very
Bay
much,
Futures,
yes.
yeah.
Bay Futures, and I was at a couple of their meetings. It was very, very informative. I've been to, there's an Alcona, a similar, equal community group in Alcona for Alcona County. Theirs is very good. The person that leads that up is really on spot. So it seems like we just kind of don't have the same level of power or momentum here for ASCO.
You said it all.
I said it as much
You
as I
said
can
it
say.
all, yep.
Have I said enough?
You said it all.
All right, so we're looking for a volunteer. If we have a volunteer, then a motion as to whether the board wants to proceed with that.
Well, Martin, thank you very much.
Okay. I'll nominate Tim Cummings to be the township representative for Develop Iosco.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, annual superintendent evaluation timeline. Everybody should have gotten a copy of the old evaluation form to be completed, turned in to me by September 22nd by 10 a.m. or earlier. And that is to encompass evaluation for the last 12 months. So you can put that in my box, give it to me, throw it through my window at the house with a brick attached to it, whichever. Next is superintendent evaluation form modification. I've also had included a revised evaluation form. This is to update from the one that we had. It removed a reference to wordsmith in there, which is no longer a valid requirement. Try to improve its clarity and to remove some of the redundancy in some of the questions. So hopefully some of the tasks that we're evaluating on aren't repeated into another subject where you're forced to change a rating on one because of how a different question is asked. The first portion is laid out to follow how the township resolution was passed in 1991 when the township adopted a manager-council concept. And in that resolution, it mirrors the Charter Township Act regarding superintendents. So each one of those line items references both that resolution and the act. So that's why they're worded the way they are, because that's how it was set up initially. There hasn't been a change. Within the township, a change hasn't been made since. The second portion covers traits needed of a superintendent to manage a township of our size. I've had Mr. Stalker review it, and he's made several recommendations for changes. I've made most of those changes. I understand why past evaluations did not require names on them, but evaluations are a very serious matter. And the person being evaluated needs to be aware of who has made certain marks so that he can seek further details on what it is specifically that that board member feels needs to be improved or to already know what is being done well. It's also so for transparency, so the public can see what we as officials are doing in that regard. It ensures that the feedback form has been validated by that rater. In my belief, I've done lots of feedbacks in my career, and my belief in that is that if you're going to write it, you got to own it. Now, of course, I'm not saying that for the old form for this time, but I would like to have it on the for the new version. So let me know if you have any changes or recommendations, or if you're good with it as is now, then we can pass it now, or can make revisions and present a revised one at the next meeting. Any comments?
I do have a comment. I wanted to say that I do like this new version as opposed to the older version from wherever it came. I just felt that it gave an opportunity to really talk about the different qualities and the different activities that the superintendent would perform. It just seems to be, I think there's a better opportunity for fairness and to actually drive the evaluators toward evaluating each individual quality better. I just thought that was true, and I actually like the version, I like the way it stands here today.
What would you say, Bob? The old one has been used for 10 years or more?
Or more,
Yeah.
maybe much more.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
Then I'll make the motion. I move to adopt this new version of the performance evaluation form would be for the next coming year, correct? Is
Correct.
that right? Then for the next coming year.
I'll support that.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, lot split request for Bissonnet Road.
Fairly straightforward lot split that involves a transfer of 38 feet of Lot 7 in the Oscoda Riverview subdivision. It essentially expands the size of that lot. There are two drawings, one that shows the current configuration of the property and one that shows the proposed with Lot 7, 8, and 9 combined being a larger parcel. The lot split has been reviewed by the appropriate staff members and approved and is being presented for approval this evening. There was a question raised at the pre-board work session about whether this particular parcel had been split in the not-too-distant past. And I'm advised there was a split about 3/4 of a mile from this location within the past few years. So that may be where that recollection is coming from.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the lot split as proposed.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, community center survey.
Yeah, just to, it's a very brief update, but to mention that as we've been running the survey now for a few weeks, actually, middle of August, it was given an extension of about a week, and it ended on midnight or shortly thereafter on September the 8th, giving everybody a full opportunity on September 7th to complete up. So there were 150 online responses and 9 paper responses. So all total, 159 responses. I'm in the process of going through and looking at the responses and coming up with a story that this tells, that I can put into words for the OCC subcommittee and for the board. Just from a very high level of response, it actually looked like we had some very good feedback, and I'm looking forward to being able to provide some direction to you guys in a week or two.
Okay. Next, employee resignation.
We have a resignation which was submitted last Friday from our current utility billing clerk. She will be leaving us on September 22nd, and I am presenting it this evening for the board's potential consideration. My suggestion is that we accept the resignation with regrets. I note that we have begun advertising immediately, given the timeline involved.
Any comments?
With regrets indeed.
Definitely with regrets. Hannah's really took on the challenge when she was hired and has done some really good things as far as like trying to get some of the accounts brought up to date and kind of reining people in and being very personal to talk to, and has definitely been an asset to the township. She will be missed.
All right. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the resignation with regret.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, now we're on to our second public comment period. There's no requirement to fill out a card, but there's still a 4-minute time limit. Does anybody wish to speak?
Oh. I didn't even hear you.
Regarding the request and the comment that I made earlier, I'm going to be positive about it because I think you guys were put in a hard position for reasons we probably don't know. But hopefully there are some lessons learned because we have an important step to take in the next month with the RAB. And we have to review the operating procedures and comment on them. We've got 5 RAB members, either alternative or primary voting in the room this evening, and hopefully others may be listening. So we take that seriously, and maybe we can alleviate future situations where any one of us, or the community members, the community in general, the township, the airport authority, are thrown into a situation where you have to make a fast decision with what I would think is not all the facts. Number one, in the email that the Air Force sent to Bob, it mentions a 24-month project schedule. And I wonder if you had asked what that really means, because at the orientation meeting, they said that this GAC unit would be in operation by October of 2018. So it's 14 months at that time in October. It's now 13 months away. And I don't know if they're sliding on their schedule. Don't know. Number 2, you mentioned, Aaron, that the DEQ was absent, or at least the knowledge seemed to be lacking. And the question came around in your discussion has the DEQ reviewed this proposal that the Air Force is throwing out? And I dare say that they haven't reviewed it. And there's a lot of issues, and I wonder whether or not the environmental health benefits and long-term for the 3 options has been discussed. And I seriously doubt if you've had the time to ask those kind of questions. And I think that takes precedence over a single property of the township or the airport may own, and versus health and environmental benefits in the long term. I just throw out a case, the township sold a piece of property, the old commissary, for what, $70,000, $80,000? And that's small, that's peanuts compared to the millions of dollars the Air Force is going to be spending for this contamination and the negative impact if it's not done quickly. I fear that the Air Force, at best, communications may have caused a lack of communications, this rush to judgment or review of this. So at best, that's probably that. At worst, I hope it's not a divide and conquer. You know, they approach the township, the airport, the DEQ isn't fully informed, and they want your approval, and then they kind of get the ball rolling. So let's hope it's not that. But I do want to ask you to think about what are the criteria that you're making some of these decisions, and are you taking the right appropriate time and have the information at your disposal and comfortable with before making some of these decisions. I mean, we only have the RAB, as Jim mentioned. We have the RAB orientation meeting next week. So a decision this week, I'm at a loss of understanding. And I'll leave it at that. It's a lot, but I just hope that some lessons learned, and I hope that your review of the RAB procedures you can help to alleviate potential future communications issues, get the team and the RAB to work together in a meaningful and efficient manner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Board comments? Anybody?
Just a reminder, this Saturday is our next drop-off program. You can get your permits at the Township Treasurer's Office for $10. You need to be a resident of Oscoda Township and fill out a little form, and we'll give you a permit, and you just need to take your driver's license and that to the drop-off. It's from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you have any questions about it, we've got information in the Treasurer's Office, or you can call us at 739-7471.
And does the permit from the first drop-off earlier this year work for this one coming up, or is it a new one required?
Yes, it is, because we had a little misunderstanding about that, and some of the dates that were written on the permits were written for till the end of the year.
That's what I was asking,
Yes.
because that's the way mine was written, and I was wondering what I needed to do. Thank
Yep.
you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Just a reminder, I have this sign-up sheet. I'll check with everybody if you're available on those 2 nights. We'd like to have all the help we can get
I have another.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
for the fundraising dinner for the bike path.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
Okay, also I have, also property taxes for the summer 2017 season are due September 14th in our office also. If you have any questions or don't know if your taxes have been paid by your mortgage company or financial institution, again, give me a call, 739-7471.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My boss, and I know
All right, and this meeting's adjourned.
Thanks.